Hi, in this video I want to talk about, I guess it's a taboo subject, suicide. I got this in a comment in one of my videos on the Mystery of What video I made, and it's about, a person in the comments asked me a question about suicide, and I don't know really what I have opinion. If you want to commit suicide, obviously it depends on the circumstances, and obviously we all have our peaking points, our points of thresholds. We obviously have all our thresholds, and suicide's something I'd say if you really want to commit suicide, if you really feel the pain, as opposed to just having it some kind of pop cultural phenomenon where we want to make some kind of big deal out of suicide, like, oh, we're glorifying suicide. I'm not mocking it, no, in no way or form. It's just I'm talking about the culture that we're living in, and how a lot of people, like the goth culture and the emo culture, they sort of rely on that to give them some kind of something to make them feel full, and something to make them feel like something to make them feel like they're filling some kind of gap, and they use that. It's a very and I'm not mocking it when I say this, but a lot of people do use suicide and the concept, and they use it as it's a pop culture phenomenon in many ways, as a concept, as an idea, at least in the mainstream, and it's sometimes used as an attention grabber. People that, you know, the idea of suicide, at least the word and the concept, and when you're talking about it, it can be used as an attention seeker when the person that's experiencing some kind of emptiness will resort to, threats of suicide, and mentioning that as a concept to use to their advantage to get more attention. But when suicide, we obviously have our thresholds. We're obviously experiencing different things, and I'd say if you're really going to commit suicide, obviously if you feel like you're accomplishing something, even if it obviously it is a self-delusion, but accomplishing something for the greater good, if you feel like you are going to be saving more, then at least obviously you don't know in the end, but if you feel like you want to take the risk, obviously it's obviously a chaotic mechanism. We don't necessarily know our full effect. Well, obviously we don't have an effect, but everything has an effect on everything. Obviously the mechanism has an effect on us, and it's caused all these chaotic, at least from our point of view, mechanisms to push and pull against each other, and we don't know who's the cause and effect in the end. It's the first cause, and we're the big effect afterwards, because everything's so jumbled. Especially from the sentient point of view on planet Earth, where everything is obviously just pushing and pulling against each other left and right, pulling and tugging and cutting strings and doing all sorts of things. We obviously don't know everything. So obviously, just depending. If you feel like, from your point of view, if you're going to accomplish something, and I would say if you were going to commit suicide, it's something that would come naturally when you know you're ready. It's not. It's going to be something that comes viscerally. If you have to sit there and think about suicide, it wasn't really that you wanted to commit suicide, and you wanted to reap the rewards. But once you're dead, you're not going to be reaping any rewards once you've committed suicide. So that's just a conception you have to get out. I think people understand, but they never attack that when it comes to people that are trying to be martyrs or understand the concept. I'm almost in a way tackling a different issue right now. Martyrs, the understanding of suicide, and how you're not going to be reaping, you're not going to be getting the attention once you're dead, or so you can fake a suicide. I guess I'm attacking that kind of phenomenon in that point of view that's never really addressed. Is you're not going to be reaping the rewards once you're dead, so it doesn't really matter. Your ego gratification out of killing yourself or seeming dead. Seeming dead, obviously, you can fake your death, like Elvis Presley. Yeah, right. So, yeah, you can and then see how everyone reacts, but no. I mean, I'm just going off on the subject. I'm trying to make a full video, because I could just say, if you don't want to live, kill yourself, and that's perfectly reasonable. That's almost a logical point of view. But I usually say suicide is usually a visceral thing, someone that doesn't just sit there and think about it for a long time, unless the thinking is the thing that causes you want to kill yourself. So thinking, obviously, if you're thinking beforehand, I say that suicide is obviously something that happens viscerally, and something that you would want to that you would just do out of just an experience. You do it immediately, viscerally. You bang your head against the wall if you really wanted to die. It doesn't matter the outcome. If you really wanted to die, you wouldn't even consider the outcome. Obviously, people want to die, but they consider the outcome, so they don't really want to kill themselves. They just don't want to live, and that's another distinction I want to make. Is some people just don't want to live, and there's other people that want to actively kill themselves. And when they say that, oh, well, it's a bit of a misconception when you're not sitting. If you're not actively banging your head. If you want to kill yourself, you will viscerally find anything in the room or anywhere that you want to kill yourself. Obviously, it's a heat of the moment, usually kind of thing. And obviously, you can think about it. And say if you're a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, you're obviously sitting there thinking about it. It's beyond your control, especially since you can't move anything. Say if you're quadriplegic from your neck down, you can sit there and think about wanting to die, and eventually the process will hand itself. It will obviously the process will happen if you have the right to die, and you can eventually gain that right and achieve that right. So once that's one of the few examples where you can think about it for a while before you really consider it. But obviously, it's something that you've probably been considering for a while, living in your miserable circumstances where you've recognized that you want to kill yourself. So killing yourself is if you feel like if viscerally speaking, obviously that's in many circumstances, but thinking about it obviously can happen as well. And it's been a big pop culture phenomenon, or I wouldn't say pop culture phenomenon, but it's one of those emo. It's a culturalistic thing people use to their advantage as well. The idea of not wanting to live as opposed to wanting to kill yourself, and that's usually a lot of cases. People get sad; they don't want to live for a while, then they're happy again. People are satisfied. Oh, it's the same grind day in, day out. I don't want to live. But if things are good, if they're sitting on a beach on a lawn chair with their feet out on the feet sticking out, yeah, then they're fine. They don't mind living with that every day until they realize, oh, it's the same crap every day. I need to go back to work. And all sorts. That's just another point I want to bring up. And so people are never satisfied. And obviously, death is the ultimate answer to this life game, non-existent. And why exist to begin with if we're just going to die anyway? And that's the point. So only if you really feel like you want to kill yourself, and it's usually a visceral thing. And in that case, no one's going to stop you usually. And if they are, you're going to have obviously the time that you do have time to think about wanting to die, and you know you're going to kill yourself is when you have absolutely no capability, like being an insane person in solitary confinement, or where you can't find any way to kill yourself. You're being wrapped up. It's like you're stuck in your mind. You have no control over yourself, where they restrain you so much. Or if you're a quadriplegic, you can try to stop breathing. But obviously, that's a mechanism you don't have much control over, because when you want to start breathing again, you're going to breathe again. You have to have something preventing you. And it's all about the opportunity of circumstance. And obviously, there's people that think about it for a while, then they kill themselves. Obviously, considering circumstances of things that some usually just happen to them, or seeing something that will happen to them. There's an example like Bud Dwyer, who there's videos on YouTube where he kills himself. Obviously, he was seeing himself. He's a politician. I can't remember exactly what, but it was late 1980s, where it was on live television, and he ended up killing himself because he knew he was going to be going to jail for some kind of extortion. Political extortion or some kind of tax evasion. I can't remember exactly what he was going to prison for, but he was going to experience that, and he ended up pulling a gun out of a folder and shooting himself in the head, and right in front of everyone, and there was a fountain of blood bleeding around out of his nose. And obviously it's the expectation of something, or obviously something that just happened to you, and that's when you start thinking about it. That's another circumstance where you can think about killing yourself, is the expectation of something negative, knowing of some kind of inevitability where you think you can't avoid it. So that's another reason why you can consider thinking about killing yourself as avoid to the visceral experience of just reacting and killing yourself. Just pulling a gun out, I can't take it anymore, kaboom. Because this thought just came to you, and it's just a recognition or a realization that everything's shit all of a sudden right now. Why is everything happening? You start viscerally experiencing it. One thing leads to another. Momentum leads you to almost in a way work both ways, and the continue living perspective, and momentum can work in another way, viscerally speaking, when it comes to suicide. So suicide, while not the answer to everything, is the only reasonable answer, and in the end, that's what's going to happen to everyone. We're going to die, and how we die, obviously, once we're dead, is irrelevant, but obviously the suffering we experience, if we experience any, is relevant still. So so suicide is obviously something that I have nothing against. Right to die all the way, and I hope that we have soon in this country the right to die with dignity, finally, where we don't have to take the risk, where with all the people that don't want to live, or some kind of roller coaster like the heart attack roller coaster that's been put into consideration at I don't know exactly where, a heart attack, roller coaster, or where you instantly die because you're going so fast down. It's such a steep angle that your heart just gives out. I can't remember the exact words to describe that kind of situation, but you're put under the weight, and that's how it kills you. Or you can die by drinking some potassium cyanide or something like that, some kind of other poison where you're not going to have to sit there thinking about all the risks. It's a guaranteed death, you don't have to sit there and think about the consequences, and where all the people that don't want to live and they don't necessarily make the distinction they're thinking about, they can consider it all the more once they realize it's not going to be as a risky equation. They can jump on it just as much, and it's not going to be all of a sudden everyone wants to kill themselves. It's going to be a consideration where obviously the people that really want to die would have already done it, and the people that still don't want to that don't want to live, that don't want to live, will have it as more of a consideration, as a possibility. Sort of like the gun thing, prohibition. People will find a way if they really want it. And the people that really want it, they can find some poison that wants to kill them. They can find something. Obviously, the risk is there, but it's not in a controlled environment. But so suicide is a risky thing, and obviously it can change if we can find some way to create the right to die in a more reasonable way by having guaranteed deaths as opposed to risky deaths where you might end up living in the end and it was a failed and you end up in a hospital bed as a vegetable for the rest of your life. So I do advocate for a right to die, and I hope that does happen eventually. I hope it happens right away. Dr. Kevorkian, obviously a prime example of right to die. Obviously he was put in jail because found out that he was doing that. So I'm all for it, and obviously I was just describing the intricacies of suicide and the circumstances and the pop culture and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to cover everything, cover all bases when it comes to this. I might make another video, I don't know. So I think I explained it. It's usually, yeah, I don't want to add any more. I don't want to insult the topic anymore. So it's a right to die, and I hope that happens eventually, and let all the people that don't want to live anymore finding suffering and they don't want to take the risk, hopefully they can find some peace and finally find some peace in that kind of situation, in the situation they're in. So thank you, and until next time, bye.